Hello friends, if you want to watch super hit movie 2012 in English, then you must like this video if you are visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel friends in today's video. The movie we're going to talk about is called 2012. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm going to tell you, I'm also going to give you all the information on which OTT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film, storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the ends. So let's start the video. 2012 is a 2009 American epic in fiction disaster film directed by Roland Emmerich, written by Emmerich and Harald Kloser, and stars John Cusack, Amanda Peet, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Oliver Platt, Thandie Newton, Danny Glover, and Woody Harrelson. Based on the 2012 phenomenon, its plot follows geologist Adrian Helmsley, Ejiofor, and novelist Jackson Curtis, Cusack, as they struggle to survive an eschatological sequence of events including earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, mega tsunamis, and a global flood. Filming, planned for Los Angeles, began in Vancouver in early August 2008 and wrapped up in mid-October 2008. The film ran a lengthy advertising campaign, which included the creation of a website from its main character's point of view and a viral marketing website on which filmgoers could register for a lottery number to save them from the ensuing disaster. 2012 was released in the United States by Sony Pictures, releasing on November 13, 2009, to commercial success, grossing over $791 million worldwide against a production budget of $200 million, becoming the fifth highest-grossing film of 2009. The film received mixed reviews from critics, but was nominated for Best Action, Adventure, or Thriller Film and Best Special Effects at the 36th Saturn Awards, and for Best Visual Effects at the 15th Critics' Choice Awards. Plot: in 2009, American geologist Adrian Helmsley visits astrophysicist Satnam Surutani in East India and learns that a new type of neutrino from a solar flare is heating the Earth's core. Returning to Washington, D.C., Adrian alerts White House Chief of Staff Carl Anheuser and President Thomas Wilson. In 2010, over 46 nations begin building 9 arks in the Himalayas, in Tibet, and storing artifacts in secure locations. Nima, a Buddhist monk, is evacuated with his grandparents, and his brother Tenzin joins the Ark project. Additional funding is secretly raised by selling tickets to the rich for €1 billion per person. In 2012, struggling science fiction writer Jackson Curtis is a chauffeur in Los Angeles for Russian billionaire Yuri Karpov. Jackson's former wife Kate and their children, Noah and Lily, live with Kate's boyfriend, plastic surgeon, and amateur pilot Gordon Silberman. Jackson takes Noah and Lily camping in Yellowstone National Park. When they find Yellowstone Lake dried up and fenced off by the United States Army, they are caught and brought to Adrian. They later meet conspiracy theorist and radio personality Charlie Frost, who tells Jackson of Charles Hapgood's Earth crust displacement theory and the Mesoamerican long count calendar predict the end of world in 2012 and worldwide catastrophe, and that the world's governments silence anyone attempting to warn the public. Despite his initial skepticism, Jackson heeds Charlie's warning after seeing indications that validate it. At the Santa Monica airport, after dropping off Yuri's sons Alec and Oleg, who also warn of impending doom as they board a plane, he rents a Cessna 340A and sets out to rescue his family. As the Pacific coast suffers a horrific 10.9 earthquake along the San Andreas Fault, Jackson and his family reach the airport and get the Cessna airborne. The group flies to Yellowstone and Jackson retrieves Charlie's map of the Ark's location. The Yellowstone caldera erupts, with Charlie staying behind to finish his broadcast. He is killed by debris. Realizing they need a larger plane to fly to Asia, the group lands at McCarran International Airport south of downtown Las Vegas to search for one. Adrian, Carl, and first daughter Laura fly to the Arks, while President Wilson remains in the White House to address the nation. Jackson finds the Karpovs, Yuri's girlfriend Tamara, and their pilot Sasha. Sasha and Gordon fly the families out in an Antonov An-500 as the volcanic ashes from the caldera envelop the Las Vegas Valley. The planet's crust shifts, resulting in billions dead in disasters worldwide, including President Wilson. With the presidential line of succession gone, following the death of the vice president and the disappearance of the Speaker of the House, Carl appoints himself acting commander-in-chief. Upon reaching the Himalayas, the Antonov's engines malfunction. As the plane touches down on a glacier, the party uses a Bentley flying spur stored in the hold to escape, except Sasha, who stays in the cockpit and is killed when the jet goes over a cliff. The survivors are spotted by Chinese Air Force helicopters, which take only the 3 ticket-bearing Karpovs, leaving Tamara and Jackson's family behind. The abandoned group later encounters Nima, who, with his own family, takes them to the Arks, where they stow away on Ark 4 with Tenzin's help. With a mega tsunami approaching, Carl orders the loading gates closed, though most people have not boarded. Adrian persuades the captain and the other surviving world leaders to allow passengers aboard the Arks, but Yuri falls to his death as he pushes his sons onto Ark 4. The gate closes after survivors are on board, injuring Tenzin and fatally crushing Gordon. Tenzin's impact driver used to access the ship gets lodged in the gate mechanism, preventing it from closing completely and disabling the ship's engines. As the tsunami strikes, the Ark starts flooding as it is set adrift, heading for Mount Everest. Adrian rushes to clear the gears, but watertight doors close, trapping the stowaways and drowning Tamara. Noah and Jackson dislodge the tool. The crew regains control of the Ark, while Jackson and Noah make it back safely. 27 days later, the waters are receding. The Arks approach the Cape of Good Hope, where the Drakensberg Mountains are the highest mountain range on Earth. Adrian and Laura begin a relationship, while Jackson and Kate reconcile. Alternate ending. An alternate ending appears in the film's DVD release. After Ark 4's Captain Michaels announces that they are heading for the Cape of Good Hope, Adrian learns by phone that his father, Harry, and Harry's friend Tony Delgado survived a mega tsunami that capsized their cruise ship Genesis. Adrian and Laura strike up a friendship with the Curtis family. Kate thanks Laura for taking care of Lily. Laura tells Jackson that she enjoyed his book, Farewell Atlantis. And Jackson and Adrian have a conversation reflecting on the events of the worldwide crisis. Carl apologizes to Adrian and Laura for his negligent actions. Jackson returns Noah's cell phone, which he recovered during the Ark 4 flood. Finally, the Ark finds the shipwrecked Genesis and its survivors on a beach. Cast John Cusack as Jackson Curtis, a struggling writer and a father of 2 children. Chiwetel Ejiofor as geologist Adrian Helmsley, chief science advisor to the U.S. President. Amanda Peet as Kate Curtis, a medical student and Jackson's former wife. Oliver Platt as Carl Anheuser, the White House chief of staff. Thandiwe Newton, credited as Thandi Newton, as Laura Wilson, an art expert and first daughter and Adrian's love interest. Tom McCarthy as Gordon Silberman, a plastic surgeon pilot and Kate's boyfriend. George Siegel as Tony Delgado, a jazz singer. Danny Glover as Thomas Wilson, the President of the United States and Laura's father. Woody Harrelson as Charlie Frost, a fringe science conspiracy theorist and radio talk show host. Liam James as Noah Curtis, Jackson and Kate's son. Morgan Lilly as Lily Curtis, Jackson and Kate's daughter. Blue Mankuma as Harry Helmsley, Adrian's father and Tony Delgado's vocal partner. Zlatko Buric as Yuri Karpov, a Russian billionaire and former boxer. Beatrice Rosen as Tamara Jekin, Yuri's girlfriend. John Billingsley as Frederick West, a colleague of Adrian. Chin Han as Tenzin, an Ark worker who attempts to save his family. Osric Chow as Nima, a Buddhist monk and Tenzin's younger brother. Alexandra Hausmann and Philippe Hausmann as Alec and Oleg Karpov, Yuri's twin sons. Jimmy Mistry as Satnam Surutani, an Indian astrophysicist who discovers the neutrinos which are warming Earth's crust. Johan Erb as Sasha, Yuri's pilot. Ryan McDonald as Scotty, Adrian and Frederick's assistant. Stephen McCaddy as Captain Michaels, the captain of Ark 4. Lisa Liu as Grandmother Sonam, Tenzin and Nima's grandmother. Henry O as Lama Rinpoche, a Buddhist monk. Patrick Beauchau as Roland Picard, the director of the Louvre who is killed with a car bomb by the U.S. government. Chang Tseng as Grandfather Sonam, Tenzin and Nima's grandfather. Karen Konoval as Sally, President Wilson's secretary. Agam Darshi as Aparna Tsurutani, Satnam's wife. Michael Buffer as himself, announcing for a boxing match in Las Vegas. Dean Marshall as the ARC-4 communications officer. Zinaid Mimishevich as Sergei Makarenko, the president of Russia. Marilyn Gann as the German chancellor. Lyndall Grant as Arnold Schwarzenegger, the governor of California. Vincent Cheng as a Chinese colonel. Leonard Tanishchi as the Italian prime minister. Parm Soor as the Saudi Arabian prince who helps to pay for the construction of the arks. Elizabeth Richard as Queen Elizabeth II. Frank C. Turner as preacher. Production, development. Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods was listed in 2012's credits as the film's inspiration, and Emmerich said in a Time Out interview, "I always wanted to do a biblical flood movie, but I never felt I had the hook. I first read about the Earth's crust displacement theory in Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods." He and composer-producer Harald Kloser worked closely together, co-writing a spec script, also titled 2012, which was marketed to studios in February 2008. A number of studios heard budget projection and story plans from Emmerich and his representatives, a process the director had previously undertaken for Independence Day, 1996, and The Day After Tomorrow, 2004. Later that month, Sony Pictures Entertainment obtained the rights to the spec script. Planned for distribution by Columbia Pictures, 2012 cost less than its budget. According to Emmerich, the film was produced for about $200 million. Filming, originally scheduled to begin in Los Angeles in July 2008, began in Kamloops, Savona, Cache Creek, and Ashcroft, British Columbia, in early August 2008 and wrapped up in mid-October 2008. With the Screen Actors Guild strike looming, the film's producers had a contingency plan in case of a walkout by actors. Uncharted Territory, Digital Domain, Double Negative, Scanline, and Sony Pictures Imageworks were hired to create the film's visual effects. The film depicts the destruction of several cultural and historical landmarks around the world. Emmerich said that the Kaaba was considered for selection, but Kloser was concerned about a possible fatwa against him. Soundtrack. The film's score was composed by Harald Kloser and Thomas Wander. Adam Lambert contributed a song to the film, Time for Miracles, which was originally written by Alain Johannes and Natasha Schneider. The 24-song soundtrack includes Fades Like a Photograph by Filter and It Ain't the End of the World by George Siegel and Blue Mankuma. Master of Shadows by Two Steps from Hell was used for the film's trailers. Release. Marketing. 2012 was marketed through the fictional Institute for Human Continuity at a viral marketing website that was created by the movie studio. The website featured main character Jackson Curtis' book Farewell Atlantis, streaming media, blog updates, and radio broadcasts from zealot Charlie Frost on his website, This Is the End, 6. On November 12, 2008, the studio released the first trailer for 2012, which ended with a suggestion to viewers to find out the truth by entering 2012 on a search engine. The Guardian called the film's marketing deeply flawed, associating it with websites that make even more spurious claims about 2012. At the website, filmgoers could register for a lottery number to be part of a small population that would be rescued from the global destruction. David Morrison of NASA, who had received over 1,000 inquiries from people who thought the website was genuine, condemned it. I've even had cases of teenagers writing to me saying they are contemplating suicide because they don't want to see the world end, Morrison said. I think when you lie on the internet and scare children to make a buck, that is ethically wrong. Another marketing website promoted Farewell Atlantis. Comcast organized a roadblock campaign to promote the film in which a 2-minute scene was broadcast on 450 American commercial television networks, local English language and Spanish language stations, and 89 cable outlets during a 10-minute window between 10:50 and 11 p.m. Eastern and Pacific Time on October 1, 2009. The scene featured the destruction of Los Angeles and ended with a cliffhanger, with the entire 5:38 clip available on Comcast's Fancast website. According to Variety, the stunt will put the footage in front of 90% of all households watching ad-supported TV, or nearly 110 million viewers. When combined with online and mobile streams, that could increase to more than 140 million. Theatrical. 2012 was released to cinemas on November 13, 2009 in Indonesia, Mexico, Sweden, Canada, Denmark, China, India, Italy, the Philippines, Turkey, the United States, and Japan. According to Sony Pictures, the film could have been completed for a summer release, but a delay allowed more time for production. Citation needed. Home media. The DVD and Blu-ray versions were released on March 2, 2010. The 2-disc Blu-ray edition includes over 90 minutes of features, including Adam Lambert's music video for Time for Miracles and a digital copy for PSP, PC, Mac, and iPod. A 3D version was released in Cinemex theaters in Mexico in February 2010. It was later released on Ultra HD Blu-ray on January 19, 2021. Citation needed. Reception. Box office. 2012 grossed $166 million in North America and $603.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $769.6 million against a production budget of $200 million, making it the first film to gross over $700 million worldwide without making $200 million domestically. Worldwide, it was the fifth highest grossing 2009 film, and the fifth highest grossing film distributed by Sony Columbia, behind Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy and Skyfall. 2012 is the second highest grossing film directed by Roland Emmerich, behind Independence Day, 1996. It earned $230.5 million on its worldwide opening weekend, the fourth largest opening of 2009, and for Sony Columbia. 2012 ranked number 1 on its opening weekend, grossing $65,237,640 on its first weekend, the fourth largest opening for a disaster film. Outside North America, it is the 28th highest grossing film, the fourth highest grossing 2009 film, and the second highest grossing film distributed by Sony Columbia after Skyfall. 2012 earned $165.2 million on its opening weekend, the 20th largest overseas opening. In total earnings, the film's three highest grossing territories after North America were China, $68.7 million, France and the Maghreb, $44 million, and Japan, $42.6 million. In 2020, the film received renewed interest during the COVID-19 pandemic, becoming the second most popular film and seventh most popular overall title on Netflix in March 2020. Critical response. On Rotten Tomatoes, 2012 has an approval rating of 40% based on 247 reviews and an average rating of 5.20/10. The site's critical consensus reads, Roland Emmerich's 2012 provides plenty of visual thrills, but lacks a strong enough script to support its massive scope and inflated length. On Metacritic, the film has a score of 49 out of 100 based on 34 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale. Roger Ebert praised 2012, giving it 3.5+ stars out of 4, and saying that it delivers what it promises, and since no sentient being will buy a ticket expecting anything else, it will be, for its audiences, one of the most satisfactory films of the year. Ebert and Claudia Puig of USA Today called the film the mother of all disaster movies. Dan Coys of The Washington Post gave the film 4 out of 4 stars, deeming it the crowning achievement in Emmerich's long, profitable career as a destroyer of worlds. Jim Shembri of The Age gave the film 4 out of 5 stars, describing it as a great, big, fat, stupid, greasy cheeseburger of a movie designed to show, in vivid detail, what the end of human civilization will look like, according to his vast army of brilliant visual effects artists. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone compared the film to Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, writing, "Beware 2012, which works the dubious miracle of almost matching Transformers 2 for sheer, cynical, mind-numbing, time-wasting, money-draining, soul-sucking stupidity." Rick Groen of the Globe and Mail gave the film 1 out of 4 stars, writing, "As always in Emmerich's rollicking Armageddons, the cannon speaks with an expensive bang, while the fodder gets afforded nary a whimper." Christopher Orr of The New Republic wrote that the film's ludicrous thrills begin burning themselves out by the movie's midpoint, and added, "As the movie approaches its 2.5-hour mark, you too may feel that the end can't come soon enough." Tim Roby of the Daily Telegraph gave the film 2 out of 5 stars, saying that it was dim, and so absurdly overscaled that we're not supposed to mind. Linda Barnard of the Toronto Star gave the film 1 out of 4 stars, writing, "The clunky script and kitchen sink approach to Emmerich's global apocalypse tale makes the movie fail on a bunch of fronts." Cancelled television spin-off. In 2010, Entertainment Weekly reported a planned spin-off television series, 2013, which would have been a sequel to the film. 2012 executive producer Mark Gordon told the magazine, "ABC will have an opening in their disaster-related programming after Lost ends, so people would be interested in this topic on a weekly basis. There's hope for the world despite the magnitude of the 2012 disaster as seen in the film. After the movie, there are some people who survive, and the question is how will these survivors build a new world and what will it look like? That might make an interesting TV series." However, plans were canceled for budget reasons. It would have been Emmerich's third film to spawn a spin-off. The first was Stargate, followed by Stargate SG-1, Stargate Infinity, Stargate Atlantis, Stargate Universe, and the second was Godzilla, followed by the animated Godzilla, the series. Everything you're expecting from 2012 is exactly what you're going to get. Roland Emmerich's magnum opus is the pinnacle of his career. The director's pithy efforts like Independence Day, Godzilla, and The Day After Tomorrow feel like small indie gems in comparison to this overblown, wonderfully destructive piece of demolitionist eye candy. Utterly impossible by any stretch of the imagination, the movie is a cheesy, one-dimensional, epic-sized spectacle that does exactly what it promises to: destroy the Earth. Audiences unwilling to dismiss reality for some very expensive entertainment by way of mass death and landmark obliteration will not appreciate its full effect. As predicted by the Mayans hundreds of years ago, the year 2012 marks what they believe to be the end of the world. They even gave us an exact date, December 21st, 2012. Emmerich's movie opens near this point, as strange natural occurrences stir scientists to inquire about what's happening. It seems neutrino bursts from the sun are causing the planet's core to boil, making the crust unstable, and causing a whole lot of ruckus in the process. For the basis of his movie, Emmerich credits Charles Hapgood's 1958 Earth crust displacement theory, but how the Mayans knew this would happen is never explained. Once the rumblings cause massive earthquakes to tremor, deep chasms to rupture open, supervolcanoes to blow, and tsunamis to roll, speculation into the Mayans' curiously advanced methods of global ruin detection hardly matters. Of course, there's always some crackpot who no one believes, but who turns out to be right about his wild doomsday theories. And when the fit hits the shan, everyone regrets not listening to him sooner. Said nutjob is played by Woody Harrelson, who's having fun playing his hippie radio show host-cum-prophet. His more respectable counterpart is Chief Science Advisor Adrian Helmsley, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who warns the ever-grave U.S. President Thomas Wilson, Danny Glover, just in time. In a joint effort with various billionaires and governments, the world comes together to build arks in the Himalayas, but only a select few of the planet's population and wildlife will fit on the arks. Regardless, the President's Chief of Staff, Karl Anheuser, Oliver Platt, secures spots for the world's elite on these ships, because there's always a slimy character like this in disaster movies. Most of the action revolves around Jackson Curtis, John Cusack, a failed writer turned limo driver for Russian bazillionaire Yuri Karpov, Zlatko Buric. Curtis's ex-wife, Amanda Peet, and their 2 kids, Liam James and Morgan Lilly, now live with the nice other man Gordon, Tom McCarthy, much to Curtis's dismay. But you can believe that Gordon, along with 99% of the world's population, gets wiped out, leaving Curtis and his estranged wife to rekindle their love. And why not? After learning about the arcs from Harrelson's wacko character while on vacation in Yellowstone, Curtis proves himself a superhero faced with the task of saving his family. He outdrives an earthquake and outruns the blast path of a supervolcano. Impressive for a writer. Most of the bit characters in the movie are set up only to help Curtis along on his quest to reach China, and most die while carrying out their Good Samaritan deeds. So what's all destroyed in the movie? California falls into the ocean. All of America is covered by toxic ash. Las Vegas falls into a hellish crevasse, sparking a moment of irony, while Rio's Christ the Redeemer statue in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome topple over, killing many God-fearing Christians in the process. Emmerich spares no one, but he takes particular joy in depicting Christian icons crumbling. The John F. Kennedy aircraft carrier gets carted by a giant wave and crashes into the White House, marking the second time Emmerich has destroyed the president's home. Tibet is waterlogged by a tsunami, and when it's all over, the planet is covered in water. Emmerich and his co-writer Harald Kloser arrange a series of near escapes and ridiculous resolutions. The cliches are piled on top of one another in an almost comic fashion. There are only so many times a character can say, "My God," or "You have to take a look at this, sir," before the audience starts laughing. But there's also the impression that the movie is fully aware of its own corniness, and we're in on the joke. Aside from John Cusack outrunning planetary calamities, the movie's many other characters outrun their own waves and explosions and what have yous in airplanes and cars and on foot. It's all preposterous, but meant in the escapist disaster movie spirit. Several shots feature a bystander gawking in awe of some terrible force approaching them. A familiar shot for Emmerich, borrowed from Spielberg. Plenty of nice characters undeservedly die, while irredeemable jerks are fully redeemed. And in the end, there's an inappropriate feeling of hopefulness among the survivors, only because dwelling on the fact that virtually everyone on Earth is dead would be a major bummer. The computerized special effects throughout are big and bold and staggering, and they should be, since Emmerich's budget was a reported $250 million. He uses that money to carry out his ultimate goal of obliterating the Earth, which has been a long time coming, as those of us who have followed his work know. The action scenes unfold with clarity, so we always know what's what, unlike the majority of over-edited blockbusters. Some of it looks shoddy and stupid, but the acting for this sort of drivel is above average, so the few CGI missteps are easily forgiven. Cusack and Ejiofor are both too good for the material, but they're welcome protagonists. Harrelson, after his unexpected turn in Zombieland earlier this year, gives another memorable if throwaway performance, and Platt does a nice job making the audience despise him. Defending Emmerich's latest movie comes with some difficulty for this critic, since the director's work is generally empty commercial fare, and the majority of his movies are unwatchably bad upon revisitation. So let's be clear, this isn't a good movie, but it's an entertaining one. 2012 is trash, to be sure, but it's well-assembled trash that's bigger and better than anything Emmerich has made before. Shockingly, despite its 2-hour and 40-minute runtime, this pageant of devastation keeps our interest for the duration. Never mind logic, because it's defied in almost every scene. It's even sort of fun to point out the cliches throughout. Thinking about it too much is missing the point of this mindless exhibition. Just sit back, eat your popcorn, and watch Emmerich destroy the world. It's not so much that the Earth is destroyed, but that it's done so thoroughly. 2012, the mother of all disaster movies, and the father and the extended family, spends half an hour on ominous setup scenes. Scientists warn, strange events occur, prophets rant, and of course a family is introduced, and then unleashes 2 hours of cataclysmic special events hammering the Earth relentlessly. This is fun. 2012 delivers what it promises, and since no sentient being will buy a ticket expecting anything else, it will be, for its audiences, one of the most satisfactory films of the year. It even has real actors in it. Like all the best disaster movies, it's funniest at its most hysterical. You think you've seen end-of-the-world movies? This one ends the world, stomps on it, grinds it up, and spits it out. It also continues a recent trend toward the wholesale destruction of famous monuments. Roland Emmerich, the director and co-writer, has been vandalizing monuments for years, as in Independence Day, The Day After Tomorrow, and Godzilla. I still hold a grudge against him for that one, because he provided New York with a Mayor Ebert and didn't have Godzilla step on me and then squish me. In all disaster movies, landmarks fall like dominoes. The Empire State Building is made of rubber. The Golden Gate Bridge collapses like clockwork. Big Ben ticks his last. The Eiffel Tower, quel dommage. Memo to anyone on the National Mall. When the Earth's crust is shifting, don't stand within range of the Washington Monument. Chicago is often spared. We aren't as iconic as Manhattan. There's little in Los Angeles distinctive enough to be destroyed, but it all goes anyway. Emmerich thinks on a big scale. Yes, he destroys regular stuff. It will come as little surprise, because at this writing, the film's trailer on YouTube alone had more than 7,591,413 views, that the aircraft carrier John F. Kennedy rides a tsunami onto the White House. When St. Peter's Basilica is destroyed, Leonardo's God and Adam are split apart just where their fingers touch, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel having been moved into St. Peter's for the occasion. Then when Emmerich gets warmed up, the globe's tectonic plates shift thousands of miles, water covers the planet, and a giraffe walks aboard an ark. Also on board are the humans chosen to survive, including all the characters who have not already been crushed, drowned, or fallen into great crevices opening up in the earth. These include the heroic Jackson Curtis, John Cusack, and his estranged wife, Kate, Amanda Peet, President Wilson, Danny Glover, his chief science advisor, Adrian Helmsley, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and his chief of staff, Carl Anheuser, Oliver Platt. Many gigantic arcs have been secretly constructed inside the Himalayas by the Chinese, funded by a global consortium, and they're the only chance of the human race surviving. Along with the animals on board, there's the maybe well-named Noah, Liam James. In theory, Ark ticket holders represent a cross-section of the globe chosen democratically. In practice, Carl Anheuser pulls strings to benefit the rich and connected, and wants to strand desperate poor people on the dock. I'm thinking Emmerich often has a twist when he names villains, like Mayor Ebert from Godzilla. So how did this villain get his name? What does Anheuser make you think of? Such questions pale by comparison with more alarming events. The tectonic plates shift so violently scientists can almost see them on Google Earth. This havoc requires stupendous special effects. Emmerich's budget was $250 million, and 2012 may contain more FX in total running time than any other film. They're impressive. Not always convincing, because how can the flooding of the Himalayas be made convincing? And Emmerich gives us time to regard the effects and appreciate them, even savor them, unlike the ADD generation and its quick-cutting bay cams. Emmerich also constructs dramatic, real-scale illusions, as when an earthquake fissure splits a grocery store in half. Cusack is the hero in an elaborate sequence involving his desperate attempts to unblock a jammed hydraulic lift that threatens to sink the Ark. He does a lot of heroic stuff in this film, especially for a novelist, like leaping a van over a yawning chasm and riding a small plane through roiling clouds of earthquake dust. The bottom line is, the movie gives you your money's worth. Is it a masterpiece? No. Is it one of the year's best? No. Does Emmerich hammer it together with his elbows from parts obtained from the used disaster movie store? Yes. But is it about as good as a movie in this genre can be? Yes. No doubt it will inflame fears about our demise on December 21st, 2012. I'm worried too. I expect that to be even worse than Y2K. Review 2012 was directed by Roland Emmerich, Stargate, Midway. Written by Emmerich and Harald Kloser, Moonfall, 10,000 BC, and stars John Cusack, The Number Station, Pursuit, Amanda Peet, Identity, Brockmire, Chiwetel Ejiofor, 12 Years a Slave, Inside Man, Liam James, The Killing, Aliens vs. Predator, Requiem, Morgan Lilly, Joe Bell, Cooties, Tom McCarthy, Fair Game, Good Night and Good Luck, Oliver Platt, Chicago Med, Lake Placid, Thandiwe Newton, Crash, Reminiscence, and Woody Harrelson, 999, Out of the Furnace. It follows a group of people as they try to survive through a myriad of disasters and what could possibly be the end of the world as they know it. The plot. Emmerich's been making disaster films for a long time. Almost all of his movies focus on destruction, so one would think that he'd have mastered the simple setup and beats that follow, but that's not the case. In 2009, Adrian Ejiofor finds out that a solar flare has begun releasing new kinds of neutrinos that have heated up the Earth's core. He brings the news and the proof to Chief of Staff Anheuser, Platt, in hopes that he and the world's leaders will do something. What that something is unknown. The world leaders got the memo and built Ark-like ships, with plans of rounding up the best and brightest to survive the incoming end times. All the rich enter first, of course. This introduction is worked through swiftly and instills hope that the rest of the movie will keep this pace rolling, but it doesn't, continuing with startling slowness until the disasters begin. Fast forward to 2012, the year of our doom, and Jackson Cusack is picking up his son Noah, James, and daughter Lily, from ex-wife Kate's Peet husband Gordon's McCarthy house to go on vacation in Yellowstone. It's there that they run into conspiracy theorist Charlie Harrelson, who convinces Jackson and company to seek safety. Luckily, and I do mean luckily, Gordon can fly, and he takes the whole family, who've just returned to California, back to Wyoming for maps. It's this kind of redundancy that allows time to think about the stretching of the movie. Now they, parallel with Adrian, Anheuser, and the first daughter, Laura Newton, need to find one of the ships built for survivors, which should have been the last act. Instead, the movie finds new ways to stifle the journey, like needing another plane, being abandoned by the Chinese military, and running out of unique disasters to showcase before the budget is depleted. It doesn't matter that 2012's plot is formulaic. That's the point. What does matter is how fast it works through the beats it wants to hit, leaving nothing but rumination on its said stupidity to be focused on. The characters. Just like 2012's plot, the participants within it are rote templates that don't have the slightest bit to set them apart from the majority of characters in other movies by the same man. Jackson is a has-been sci-fi writer who hasn't scored a hit in a while, now working as a chauffeur for rich clientele and using his free time to try and write another hit. He's estranged from Kate and Noah more than Lily, though it isn't made clear why. Both Lily and Noah are prerequisites that follow the exact arc one would expect from this kind of movie. It's Jackson's quest for further success that drove away Kate, although she clearly still respects and loves him. Gordon only exists to get the two characters back together. Emmerich and Kloser never make him out to be a bad guy or even have a rivalry with Jackson. He's there to do the inevitable. A hair more personality is given to Adrian and Anheuser in the form of Adrian's expectations, which weren't met, although he never seemed too pressed about them before 2012. Or at least there weren't any scenes of him making a fuss about the government not preparing the country for the end times. A somewhat interesting back and forth between the two is introduced surrounding the necessity of notifying the world's population that their homes will soon be nothing, but the movie hangs up the subplot before it reaches a finish. Disaster blaster Roland Emmerich serves us up another of the globally apocalyptic extravaganzas he has made his own, applying his trademark CGI wrecking ball to various iconic buildings. The statue of Christ the Redeemer in Rio takes a tumble, and an awful crack appears in the Sistine Chapel ceiling, running directly between the fingers of God and man. Oh lordy. As ever in Hollywood pictures with urgent international settings, the opening scene is set somewhere in Nordamericastan, where the first signs of trouble are detected. Then we whisk to the real action, the West Wing. A copper mine is overheating somewhere in a far-off country. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays an earnest government scientist who realizes that the Earth's core temperature is overheating, as apparently smugly predicted by the ancient Mayans. It has incidentally zilch all to do with global warming. Anyway, the world is going to end in 2012, thus substantially buggering up the London Olympics and all our medal table hopes. This grave implication is sadly given scant mention here, but law and order breaks down all over the world as the Earth's crust starts to bulge and crack. And for the anarchy in London, Emmerich appears to reuse old footage of the 1990 poll tax riots. The star is John Cusack, playing a divorced novelist and author of some whinging yet inspiringly influential work about humanity and peace. Downbeat performers like him are important to counterweight the grandiloquent action with sympathetic quirkiness and ordinariness. For Cusack, the catastrophe is a valuable way of reuniting his family and moreover effecting a guilt-free removal of his ex-wife's new husband. Danny Glover is the U.S. president who elects to stay with his doomed people on Earth rather than get on board the exit arc, like a captain going down with the ship. The only other world leader who takes this noble course is, I am sorry to say, the Italian Prime Minister. Somehow I can't imagine Silvio Berlusconi being quite so noble. The British Prime Minister has no qualms about scrambling aboard the rescue ship, and the same goes for our Queen. Her mother's famous blitz spirit of not leaving London in a crisis seems not to have been inherited. Yet when the catastrophe hits, when the buildings crash and the seas engulf high mountains, one aspect of normal life still continues. Characters are still making contact via their mobile phones. Now, whatever network these people are with, I want to join. Are they on a contract or pay as you go? How marvelous that with the earth literally falling apart, this mobile phone company is still providing a service. This is a wildly over-the-top anthology of disaster pictures old and new, and Emmerich isn't above recycling other people's ideas. But it's enjoyable, and the opening CGI thrill ride through the collapsing streets of Los Angeles is undeniably good. It would be nice to be able to say that the critics had taken a wrecking ball to Roland Emmerich's latest CGI disaster fest, with as much gusto as the German filmmaker joyously destroys world-famous landmarks like the Sistine Chapel in his new offering. But after nigh on 3 hours of being blasted here, blown there, and generally pummeled into drooling submission by the on-screen mayhem, most reviewers don't seem to have the energy to pull out the knives. Reactions to 2012 tend to range from tepid surrender to the spectacular, if eventually repetitive special effects work being done, to a sort of resigned horror at the sheer brazenness of the Hollywood blockbuster in 2009. Few are prepared to really shoot Emmerich's vision to smithereens. It seems that there's a grudging respect for a man who has found his niche, whether or not you appreciate his brutal, bull-headed corner of celluloid creativity. The film, as you'll no doubt have read, focuses on the destruction of the world, as predicted by the Mayans and, apparently, various other ancient cultures since time immemorial, in December 2012. John Cusack plays pseudo-philosophical writer and limousine driver Jackson Curtis, who, believing devastation to be imminent, rushes to rescue his ex-wife and children so that they can escape from LA in a rented plane before the entire world turns upside down. It turns out that the authorities have known about the Earth's destruction since at least 2010, and a number of arcs are being built in China in an effort to save the best and richest of humanity, to allow civilization to start all over again. The Curtis clan therefore set out for the Far East in an effort to join the Exodus. Emmerich tosses off towering infernos by the dozen in single shots, throws Poseidon-like ocean liners and aircraft carriers into maelstroms like toys in a bathtub, has entire cities leveled by quakes or swept away by tidal waves, writes Empire's Kim Newman. 2012 is fundamentally terrible, but almost irresistibly entertaining. Its horrors get a tad monotonous in the midsection, but it's still a value-for-money hoot. The bottom line is, the movie gives you your money's worth, opines Roger Ebert in the Chicago Sun-Times. Is it a masterpiece? No. Is it one of the year's best? No. Does Emmerich hammer it together with his elbows from parts obtained from the used disaster movie store? Yes. But is it about as good as a movie in this genre can be? Yes. This is a wildly over-the-top anthology of disaster pictures old and new, and Emmerich isn't above recycling other people's ideas, writes out own Peter Bradshaw. But it's enjoyable, and the opening CGI thrill ride through the collapsing streets of Los Angeles is undeniably good. Thanks to a £160 million budget, the special effects are initially breathtaking, writes the Times' Kevin Marr. The destruction of Los Angeles in particular is rendered in terrifyingly precise detail. Unfortunately, the laws of diminishing returns soon set in, and by the time St. Peter's Basilica crashes down on 1,000 pious worshippers, you can only gasp at the fact that there's still an entire interminable hour of increasingly empty spectacle yet to unfold. 2012 is the kind of film where all the actors look like they've accidentally taken a stomach-churning ride on a particularly vicious roller coaster, and where people constantly say things like, "This is going to sound crazy, but here's what you have to do." In years to come, it would not be surprising to find it studied in film school as the apotheosis of Hollywood big-budget movie-making. It is certainly the archetype of style over substance. Everyone on screen is a mirror of a mirror of a mirror of a character we've seen in the movies 100 times before. But it matters not a jot, as you sit in the cinema with your senses being enjoyably battered by ridiculously over-the-top spectacle upon spectacle. Emmerich should retire now, as he has perfected his aesthetic. What did you think of 2012 if you've caught it yet? Were you knocked off your feet by the whirlwind of sound and images conjured up by the German filmmaker and his technical team, or would you rather see this kind of movie go the same way as the Mayans? Do drop a comment below and let us know. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that the first events, where John Cusack is driving to the airport while the world falls apart around him, and even the moment when him and his family outrun the natural disaster to get away in their plane, were exciting, well-filmed, and good escapism cinema. The problems began to demonstrate themselves when John Cusack's character seemed to have to put himself back in danger to keep the film exciting. The problem with a disaster film like 2012, where the world is falling apart around people, especially in largely populated places, is that once your main character has got out of the danger, there isn't really any plausible reason for him to seek out another volcano to outrun. It's not even like Cusack's character had a profession that meant he would be useful in a world-ending crisis. He wasn't a fireman or even a seismologist. He's a failing writer. Once he'd outrun one disaster, he would understandably have taken his family somewhere safe and stayed there. The other problem with the relentless amount of outrunning natural disasters is that eventually you'd pretty much seen all the film had to offer. The effects were very impressive, and I was genuinely engrossed as Cusack drove down a street that was falling away behind him, but once I'd seen him in a plane, narrowly avoiding a cloud of some sort, for the third time, it felt less like a film and more like I was watching someone else play an Xbox game. This was the most common thread through the film. A film about the supposed end of the world is a great idea, but once you've practically destroyed the Earth, killing millions, where do you go from there? The film seems to struggle to go anywhere, and while the idea of ships carrying the rich and worthy is a faithful, tried and tested plot development, it seems to take forever to go anywhere. And when we eventually get to that point, more unnecessary peril is introduced. Once you've watched a volcano destroy a mountain, a problem with a ship's brakes isn't going to be a fitting climax. I really thought people had been too harsh on this film as the first parts of the story unfolded. The action was good, the effects were spectacular, and you can't get a much better everyman than John Cusack. But eventually, I could see the cracks showing, and though 2012 is a great idea, it fails in its execution. That picture right there? That's why you go see 2012. Heck, lately, that's why you go see any Roland Emmerich film. Destruction on a massive scale. The man has taken what Irwin Allen used to do and multiplied it by 100. 2012 actually starts in 2009. Well, first it starts out in space, showing us a few different shots of our solar system and the planets lining up all in a row, with the sun at the end of that line. When we get to good old Earth, we're in India, where geologist Adrian Helmsley, Chiwetel Ejiofor, the assassin from Serenity, is meeting a fellow scientist at the Institute of Astrophysics. They go 11,000 feet down into a copper mine, where it seems they figure they may as well do some scientific research, as long as they're down there. Anyway, they have tracked a series of the biggest solar flares in history taking place over the last week, and it seems that they're putting out some different type of neutrino that instead of just passing through the Earth is interacting with the core, causing it to heat up to temperatures far exceeding normal. At this point I'm thinking, okay, that's not bad, I can buy that. Helmsley travels to Washington, D.C., where he convinces high-ranking Washington muckety-muck Carl Anheuser, a very rotund Oliver Platt, the importance of what he's found. We jump forward to 2010, where the president, Danny Glover, seriously, is addressing European heads of state about the impending end of the world. Another jump to 2011, where it becomes apparent that some sort of stealth operations are taking place to ensure the safety of works of art, wealthy and powerful people, and presumably other odds and ends. In the meantime, we meet Jackson Curtis, John Cusack, a divorced dad and not very successful author who drives a limo for a living. While his young daughter still has eyes only for daddy, His slightly older son is a much bigger fan of Mom's live-in boyfriend. Kids live with Mom and her boyfriend. Nice move, Mom. Taking the kids camping to Yellowstone, he runs into a cordoned-off military area where significant changes are happening geologically. It's here we meet Woody Harrelson as a quasi-nutjob free spirit who seems to know what's going on and fills Jackson in, including the plans for the world's elite to escape the destruction in spaceships. Of course, Cusack doesn't believe him and heads on his merry way. It doesn't take long, however, for a series of increasingly strong and frequent earthquakes, along with some other things, to convince Jackson that the crazy guy isn't crazy after all, and he grabs the ex-wife, kids, and new boyfriend just in the nick of time in the scene we've all watched in trailers and TV commercials. From here on, all hell breaks out everywhere, and watching it all happen is the whole reason for going to see this movie. Jackson is determined to save his family, and his journey to find one of these arcs grows more implausible with every passing scene. Thankfully, director Emmerich spreads the destruction out throughout the entire film, so if you're concerned that you'll have already seen the best stuff in the trailer, fear not. That was just a taste. I found it interesting that they showed a number of landmarks being destroyed, including the Vatican and the famous statue of Christ on a Brazil mountaintop. But although they showed the Kaaba in one scene, he did not portray its destruction. I've heard that he didn't show it destroyed due to fear of retribution. Anyway, the destruction throughout the film was quite well done. I especially liked the scene at Yellowstone. Very impressive. And of course, the expanded version of the destruction of California was well done, and strangely satisfying. I kid. The arcs were quite cool as well, although the MacGuffin that caused the suspense at the end was quite ridiculous. There's a fair amount of ridiculousness in 2012, but really, what does one expect going into a film like this? In the end, I enjoyed the visual effects and Chiwetel Ejiofor, who I think has a real screen presence about him. Woody Harrelson? Brief appearance, but memorable. John Cusack seemed to me like a fish out of water here, like he just really didn't belong. Thandie Newton was little more than eye candy, although she was supposed to be more. Oh, and Danny Glover as the President of the United States. LOL, funny. I think the poor guy left any acting ability he may have had down in Venezuela. Towards the end of the film, it really fell apart as Emmerich tried to inject some emotion into the film. A big contributing factor was the cheesy music in the emotional scene. The whole thing felt like it was out of a made-for-TV movie. It might have actually worked better had he not tried to make us feel the emotion via the cliched music and maybe trusted the actors to make it happen. If only he could figure out a way to make a film that didn't require actual people, other than the ones who need to die for the destruction to mean something. So if you're looking for much in the way of plot or character development, move along, nothing to see here. But if you're looking for some wicked cool visuals and destruction on a scale that even Emmerich has never put on screen before, then 2012 may be the movie for you. Hooking their doomsday scenario on an interpretation of a Mayan calendar that points to an earthly catastrophe in 2012, specifically on 12/21/12, what movie will pin its release to that date? Emmerich and writing-producing partner Harald Kloser begin by dumping Los Angeles into the sea and follow with the destruction of Las Vegas, Yellowstone National Park, Washington, D.C., the Vatican, India, Tibet, and a giant strength. Anyone who stops to think about it between grabs of popcorn might pick up the hint that Emmerich is taking particularly gleeful aim at the United States, which other director has destroyed the White House in his films not once, but now twice, and Catholicism. He goes out of his way to detail the collapse of St. Peter's and Rio's Christ the Redeemer statue, while no other religion gets taken to task. But then, that would be taking this eye-popping display of movie pyrotechnics far too seriously, or not. Coming up with halfway decent characters with which to populate disaster films has always proved an almost insurmountable problem, but Kloser and Emmerich have brought a measure of wit to the enterprise. Pick's everyman is Jackson Curtis, John Cusack, a rumpled author whose most recent unsuccessful novel happens to have been called Farewell Atlantis, and who never paid enough attention to sexy ex-wife Kate Amanda Peet, and their two young kids, Liam James and Morgan Lily. He's now forced to look on as Kate shacks up with Gordon, Tom McCarthy, while he scrapes by as a limo driver for LA-based Russian billionaire Yuri Karpov, the very engaging Zlatko Buric. As SoCal hopes for the best amid an alarming upswing in tremors and cracked streets, government scientist Adrian Helmsley, Chiwetel Ejiofor, alerts U.S. President Thomas Wilson, Danny Glover, almost too predictably grave, that increased solar fires, happily for a change, not man-made global warming, are about to turn the Earth inside out in a way not experienced since the day the dinosaurs died. While Wilson's chief of staff Karl Anheuser, Oliver Platt, readies the evacuation of the elite and the president deliberates about how to preside over the planet's final chapter, Curtis leads his kids on a series of escapes and near misses worthy of Indiana Jones. In a limo, RV, private plane, flown by non-pilot Gordon, giant Russian cargo jet, and ultimately, the biggest vehicle ever built. The action is preposterous by any standard, but that's designed as part of the fun. Eye-popping indeed are the sights of the streets of Santa Monica, rippling like so many ocean waves, molten meteors spewing out of Yellowstone, the sea claiming a ship the size of a football field, and a 6-engine jet crash landing on a Himalayan glacier. Unfortunately, it's not easy scripting the final act of a movie about the end of the world when you don't really want the final image to be a charred rock. Let it be said that 2012 plummets from reasonably distracting spectacle to sheerest silliness when, in the pointlessly protracted final reels, it tries to maintain interest in the confusingly staged jeopardy of a handful of characters when much of the world's population has already been wiped out or is about to be. Never has Rick's observation in Casablanca been more true, that the problems of a few little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. On any level other than as sheer visual sensation, 2012 is a joke, for the simple reason that it has no point of view. The film offers no philosophical, metaphysical, intellectual, and certainly no religious perspective on the cataclysm, just the physical frenzy of it all. But to ask this would be taking the picture far too seriously, or not. In Cusack and Ejiofor, 2012 has two actors who convey above-the-norm intelligence for characters in this sort of fare, although even they can't keep up the pretense as the film degenerates. Most casting choices are agreeably offbeat down through the ranks, with Woody Harrelson supercharging his scenes as a whack-job radio sage who issues on-the-air reports from the front lines of destruction. Except for some patchy work when St. Peter's crumbles, the visual effects are pretty sensational, delivering the cutting-edge CGI goods odds want and expect. It will be hard to watch Earthquake ever again after this one. 9 years ago, I had found myself desperate to see any movie during the dismal 2009 fall-winter movie season. The opportunity to see a possibly entertaining movie finally arose when two of them, Pirate Radio and 2012, were released in theaters. I had intended to see Pirate Radio first, but it was not playing at the theater that we found ourselves attending. In the end, my family and I finally settled upon watching 2012. 2012 turned out to be another one of those science fiction-oriented disaster films directed and co-written by Roland Emmerich. This is the same man who had directed such films as Independence Day, 1996, Godzilla, 1998, The 13th Floor, 1999, and The Day After Tomorrow, 2004. Now 2012 centered around a myth about the Mayan calendar, in which certain Western scholars claimed that the world will face a cataclysmic disaster in the year 2012. Mind you, I suspect that the whole world will end in 2012 scenario may have been misinterpreted. There are other beliefs regarding the Mayan calendar. Some believe that the Mayan calendar is supposed to interpret a positive physical or spiritual transformation for the planet, marking the beginning of a new era. And there are modern Mayan scholars who believe that 2012 is largely irrelevant, claiming that classic Maya sources on the subject are scarce and contradictory, suggesting that there was little if any universal agreement among them about what, if anything, the date might mean. Apparently, Emmerich and fellow screenwriter Harald Kloser decided to explore the disaster scenario. The story began in 2009 with a visit to India by American scientist Adrian Hemmelsley, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who learns from his friend and colleague Satnam Surutani, Jimmy Mystery, that neutrinos from a solar flare were causing the temperature of the Earth's core to rapidly increase. This discovery set off a chain of events in which the world's leaders, including U.S. President Thomas Wilson, Danny Glover, to collaborate upon a secret project that will ensure the continuity of humanity by choosing 400,000 people for admission aboard a series of large ships or hydraulic arcs being constructed in the Himalayas. To help fund the venture, additional individuals were allowed to purchase passage aboard these arcs for €1 billion apiece. By the time the secret project neared completion in 2012, a Los Angeles writer and part-time driver for a Russian billionaire named Jackson Curtis, John Cusack, learned about the Mayan myth and the possibility of the world's future, along with the secret project from a hermit and conspiracy theorist named Charlie Frost, Woody Harrelson, while vacationing with his kids at Yellowstone National Park. After Jackson returned his kids to his ex-wife Kate, Amanda Peet, and her live-in boyfriend Gordon Silberman, Thomas McCarthy, Jackson realized that Frost might be right about an upcoming apocalypse when he drove his employer's twin sons to the airport. Jackson purchased a small plane and convinced Kate and Gordon to get the kids and escape from Los Angeles with him. Fortunately, Gordon turned out to be an amateur pilot, and they escaped from a California sliding into the Pacific following a series of devastating earthquakes. The group returned to the Yellowstone Park in order to learn about the location of the secret project from Frost. After learning that particular information, Jackson and the others barely escaped the destruction of Yellowstone and made tracks for Las Vegas and later, China and the Himalayas. Meanwhile, Adrian learned that the Earth's destruction may come a lot sooner than he and Satnam had surmised. The world leaders and certain members of the population also head for China. What can I say about 2010? Come on, it is a Roland Emmerich disaster film, which meant that it had disasters of epic proportions, slightly cheesy dialogue, and science that was probably more fiction than fact. A Roland Emmerich disaster film also ensured a cast of, well, many roles in various subplots, including one that featured a fractured American family. And considering that I have seen these very same aspects in other Emmerich films, I should have been bored with 2012. Hell, I have read some posts and reviews on the web that the movie lacked originality. And yet, I enjoyed 2012 very much. Both Emmerich and Kloser had created a solid script that provided detailed accounts of the 3-year countdown to 2012, the disasters that unfolded, and the major characters' experiences in dealing with those same disasters. They also did an exceptional job in detailing the journey that took Jackson, his family, and Gordon from Los Angeles to the Himalayas. I also enjoyed the clashes between Adrian and President Wilson's ruthless and self-serving Chief of Staff Karl Anheuser, Oliver Platt. Their quarrels focused upon one of the movie's main themes that centered on humanity's willingness for compassion toward others. One aspect of the movie that I really enjoyed was the scenes that featured intimate moments between some of the characters. President Donald Trump has been the most powerful man in the world for over a month. Yet the world is still in one piece. To prepare myself for disaster, I rewatched a film I hated at the cinema, 2012. I left the cinema less than impressed after Deepwater Horizon, a smaller-scale disaster film than Emmerich's usual globe-spanning adventures. Read my review of that film here. Would 2012 satisfy my appetite for destruction? No matter how many national monuments he digitally destroys, Emmerich finds it difficult to direct a decent film. Each of his disaster films are bloated, over-reliant on CGI, poorly scripted, illogically plotted, etc. Just check out Independence Day Resurgence for proof and read my review here. And they are populated with good actors, giving them a veneer of respect. After watching it for a second time, yes, I did watch it at the cinema, I think it would work better as a spoof, just like Paranormal Activity, a film that came out close to 2012, would have. Check out my review of that here. It's quite ridiculous, fitting in with the spoof nature of the whole. Before it came out, I wrote a piece about how the trailer told the story of the whole film. you could guess the nature of the characters and the basic plot. Not only that, but most of the money shots of destruction were shown in the trailer. I may as well have not watched the film. Just think about the characters for a second. They are cliché to spoof levels of cliché. There is the madman who predicted all of this, yet nobody believed him. There is the man who wanted to stick to the plan against the man who wanted to do what is right, even if it meant putting the remnants of mankind in danger. There is the divorcee who might or might not get back with his ex-wife in the end. There's a noble death that redeems a character. The silly plot about neutrinos heating up the Earth's core is spun at the start in a quick 5-minute scene. Everyone apart from the Americans were stereotyped caricatures. Yes, they were that bad. As a spoof, it would be perfect. Think of the great spoof of Arnold Schwarzenegger, or the trite but hilarious dialogue, or Danny Glover's president saying, "I'm coming home, Dorothy," minutes before the USS John F. Kennedy smashes into the White House. But it isn't a spoof. It's supposed to be taken seriously. I guess it does supply the audience with excessive scenes of destruction. But apart from the monument destruction montage, everything else blurs into one big skyscraper falling down. There has to be some glue holding the other parts of the film together. Caricatures and stereotypes do not make gripping characters that we care about. Neither does sterile dialogue. Without this glue, it's just destruction porn, and boring destruction porn at watch. Instead of this, I should have gone back to the classic disaster films. When I first saw the trailer for 2012 a few months ago, it profoundly depressed me. Through spectacular displays of global catastrophe and urban destruction, the previews promised 2 hours of unapologetic disaster porn. I watched as buildings tumbled and exploded, cars and people were sucked up into hellish cracks in the earth, and all the while John Cusack tried to outrun Mother Nature via limo, camper, and small plane, succeeding every time. Nothing about these scenes made me want to see 2012, but I'm essentially a film whore, so there was little doubt that I'd catch it on the big screen. Guess what? I thought it was great. Not a great film, mind you, but a great disaster movie. And since it comes from Roland Independence Day Emmerich, there was a 40% chance of it being at least watchable. Those odds would have been higher had he not also made The Day After Tomorrow. In a lot of ways, 2012 plays like the greatest hits of Independence Day, T-Dat, and The Core, with a dash of dueling asteroid epics, Armageddon, and Deep Impact thrown in. What sets this new film apart is that, much like a frustrated artist sketching and sketching and sketching, Emmerich has finally gotten just about everything right. Look, I know some of you are rolling your eyes right now. Others have probably stopped reading. But bear with me for a few more moments, please. I think the reason 2012 didn't come out in the summer was not because it would have clashed with Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, but because it is a much smarter, more compelling kind of blockbuster. This is Oscar season, after all. And while I don't expect this movie to take home anything other than awards for sound and special effects, the fact remains that a good amount of its 158-minute runtime is devoted to solid actors giving solid performances. There's no slumming here, no overt mugging from the main players. The careers of John Cusack, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Oliver Platt, and Thandie Newton are all very much intact. Amanda Peet may be in trouble, but I think her part was just underwritten. And I love that everyone treated the material as A-level stuff. It just occurred to me that I've devoted not a single word to 2012's plot. That's probably for the best. This is a movie that needs to be experienced on the big screen, so I urge you to go check it out, even if you wait to see it on the $5 or $1 circuit. I will say that there are several elements that surprised me, which was itself a grand revelation. Unlike most action spectacles, you can't tell right off the bat who will live and who will die in 2012. Characters you're certain will be cute one-offs become very important. Characters you assume will follow their archetype into stereotype take roads less traveled, except for Woody Harrelson, whose doom and gloom survivalist character's only surprise was not speaking in a hick drawl, which I found very distracting. The movie's biggest twist involves the massive ships that have been constructed to save mankind from extinction. It's not an out-of-the-blue contrivance. but rather a cool way of playing with audience expectations. Regarding my earlier reservations about the glorification of death, carnage, and mayhem, I was relieved to find that those elements, while certainly evident, did not overpower the movie. In fact, 45 minutes into 2012, I began to wonder if I'd even see a catastrophic event. All of the tragedy unfolds naturally, and we're given a chance to experience it as the main characters do, both in flashes and in rubbernecking horror, depending on how close to the danger they happen to be at a given point. The whole 3 steps ahead of the fireball crumbling earth thing did become ridiculous after a while, but by then, I really wanted the characters to escape so I could find out where they were headed. Meant Homa's Wilson Danny Glover almost too predictably grave that increased solar fires happily for a change, not man-made, global warming, are about to turn the earth inside out in a way not experienced since the day the dinosaurs died, while Wilson's chief of staff Carl Anheuser Oliver Platt readies the evacuation of the elite and the president deliberates about how to preside over the planet's final chapter. Curtis leads his kids on a series of escapes and near misses worthy of Indiana Jones in a limo RV private plane, flown by non-pilot Gordon giant Russian cargo jet, and ultimately the biggest vehicle ever built. The action is preposterous by any standard, but that's designed as part of the fun eye-popping. Indeed are the sights of the streets of Santa Monica, rippling like so many ocean waves, molten meteors spewing out of Yellowstone, the sea claiming a ship the size of a football field, and a 6-engine jet crash landing on a Himalayan glacier. Unfortunately, it's not easy scripting the final act of a movie about the end of the world when you don't really want the final image to be a charred rock. Let it be said that Tattoo plummets from reasonably distracting spectacle to sheerest silliness when in the pointlessly protracted final reels. It tries to maintain interest in the confusingly staged jeopardy of a handful of characters when much of the world's population has already been wiped out or is about to be. Never has Rick's observation in Casablanca been more true, that the problems of a few little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world on any level other than a sheer visual sensation. 2012 is a joke, for the simple reason that it has no point of view. The film offers no philosophical, metaphysical, intellectual, and certainly no religious perspective on the cataclysm, just the physical frenzy of it all. But to ask this would be taking the picture far too seriously. Or not in Cusack and Ur. 2012 has 2 actors who convey above the norm intelligence for characters in this sort of fare, although even they can't keep up the pretense as the film degenerates. Most casting choices are agreeably offbeat down through the ranks, with Woody Harrelson supercharging his scenes as a whack job radio sage who issues on the air reports from the front lines of destruction, except for some patchy work. When St. Peter's crumbles, the visual effects are pretty sensational, delivering the cutting-edge CGI goods. Odds want and expect. It will be hard to watch Earthquake ever again after this. When it's not the end of the world, we tell ourselves such things when we burn our toast or spill our juice or get D's on our semester projects. It's a comforting thought. No matter how badly we mess up today, we have a chance to wake up and make it better tomorrow. And even if it really is the end of the world, well, there's still a bright side that D suddenly doesn't look so bad, for instance, and really why worry about the status of your toast when you're toast yourself? Jackson Curtis, a part-time novelist and full-time chauffeur, isn't thinking about toast of any sort as 2012 gets underway. He's thinking about a trip to Yellowstone National Park and how much fun he and his children will have there, especially if he remembers the bug spray. He's thinking about how his ex-wife will kill him for showing up late to pick up said kids. He's thinking about what terrible timing his SUV has, stubbornly deciding not to start when it surely knows full well that he's already running late. He's thinking about how silly it'll look going camping in Yellowstone in his boss's limousine. Well, at least it's not the end of the world, right? But of course it is. Or at least close enough, for at that very moment in Washington, D.C., a handful of clued-in politicians are wringing their hands over the cataclysm to end all cataclysms. The Earth's core is wigging out, and in a matter of days or hours or minutes, it'll turn Yellowstone's Old Faithful into Old Vengeful. then touch off massive earthquakes and mega tsunamis while unhooking the very crust of the Earth itself. In other words, it's just another day at the History Channel, but it's not the sort of thing that can be easily fixed with, say, a stimulus package. So the worlds and the no leaders decide to keep their collective mouths shut. They have for years now, while building massive arcs to carry humanity's remnants, the smartest, the strongest, and the richest, to start a new life somewhere. Jackson, not being particularly smart or strong or rich, has no idea that his vacation will be cut short. Not until that is, he tries to visit a lake that has boiled away and meets a crazy end times radio show host with a penchant for pickles and a map to those arcs. I wonder if they'll bring any toaster's positive elements. The critic said I was naive and an unabashed optimist. Jackson tells a fan of his books. But what do they know, right? Director Roland Emmerich might have spoken these words about himself. It might seem odd to call a film that revolves around the end of the world optimistic, but Tattoo does offer a strange sense of emotional buoyancy. And that's a good thing, considering most of the Earth gets shoved underwater. The crux of this optimism revolves around the characters' willingness to sacrifice themselves to save others. We see this again and again. A father pushing his son to safety, losing the chance to save himself. A pilot helping passengers escape a crashing plane while he stays behind a man flirting with almost certain death to save an load of humanity. The President of the United States himself, who by virtue of his job has a spot on one of the Ark, elects to stay behind in solidarity with the rest of the country today. We are one family stepping out into the darkness together. He tells everyone that idea of family is another massive theme, how family can make disaster not just bearable, but strangely worthwhile. While we see and hear scabs of familial tales, Jackson's becomes our focal point. Divorced from his wife, he seems at first to be a benignly inattentive dad. His son Noah finds his mom's new boyfriend, a guy named Gordon, to be more approachable. But as the family battles one crisis after another, the five of them, mother, father, children, boyfriend, grow closer, sacrificing and caring for each other. When Jackson's kids ask him to promise that they'll live through it all, Jackson simply says, "I promise you we're going to all stay together, no matter what happens later." Gordon confesses to Jackson that he has what Gordon always wanted, a real family. "You're a lucky man." Gordon tells him as the globe grinds to a grim end, "Don't ever forget it when the arcs shut their doors on a teeming mass of humanity begging for refuge. A scientist makes a heartfelt plea to let at least some of them in. It would be terrible. He says to launch our future with an act of cruelty." His speech works spiritual elements. The idea that the world ends in 2012 is based on a calendar formed by the ancient Mayans. Though it should be noted that the Mayans also had predictions covering at least another 2,700 years, meaning they must not have thought it was the end. The talk show host tells us that other civilizations echoed the prophecy and claims that the Bible predicts something of the sort too. He says, as his final broadcast is coming to an end, the host tells his listeners he hopes they have all made their peace with God. Jackson and his young daughter Lily sing the gospel song, "Will the Circle Be Unbroken?" on the way to Yellowstone. We see religious services on television and hear a pastor say he and his followers believe in the gospel of the Lord Jesus. We have nothing to fear. The president spends time in a chapel and in his final address recites Psalm 23. When it looks as if he's about to die, we hear the president whisper to his deceased wife Dorothy, "I'm coming home." Another politician refuses to tell his aged, forgetful mother about the end of the world, explaining later that she deserves to meet her maker on her own terms. Catholics gather in St. Peter's Square to listen to the Pope. The service is cut short by a massive earthquake that destroys the Vatican, whereupon we see a massive crack in the roof of the Cine Chapel, which opens a fissure between Michelangelo's Adam and God. Of course, we see a man on a street corner holding a sign saying, "Repent, the end is near." And Buddhist monks play ancillary roles. Sexual content. Gordon, a surgeon who specializes in breast implants, apparently lives with Kate Jackson's ex-wife. When he tries to cuddle her in the supermarket, he tells her that women pay thousands of dollars to have him handle their breasts. He says you get it for free. Jackson tries to take his children to a spot in Yellowstone that he and Kate used to love, whereupon his son says, "I don't want to know where you and Mom had sex." One woman wears skimpy cleavage, revealing outfits. Several couples kiss. Violent content. If I described every scene of violent in 2012, this story would use up more bandwidth than YouTube. So let's start with the obvious. The film ultimately kills off about 6 billion people. 2012 showcases what the ultimate apocalypse might look like. If it were a Six Flags thrill ride, we see water swamp the Himalayas, Los Angeles fall into the Pacific, quakes tear cities asunder, and Yellowstone blows sky-high plains. Crash in massive fireballs, trains plummet off their track. Cars slam into pillars of earth and aircraft carriers. Take out the White House, people drown. They fall, they're consumed by fireballs. They're swacked by massive flaming dirt clots. They're crushed by machinery along with the rest of those 6 billion hapless souls. Many of the main characters die. Don't see the gory instant of doom for any of them. The camera moves on just before the tidal wave crashes down or hovers above the machinery as someone's body slips into the gears, but we're meant to feel their loss before the end comes. We hear that governments have been killing people who wanted to tell the world about its impending doom. The curator of France's museums is subsequently killed when his car explodes in the same tunnel in which Princess Diana perished. We see news footage covering the aftermath of a mass suicide. Crude or profane language, 1 FW for his words, nearly 20 misuses of God's name paired with DN at least 5 times. Jesus' name is abused twice. AH and B are also blurted out. An obscene gesture is made. Drug and alcohol content. Characters drink wine, champagne, whiskey, and beer. Other negative elements. Noah talks back to his dad and disobeys him, albeit to help him. A politician tries to convince folks to not reopen an arc door. Lots of people lie, or at the very least, withhold the truth. Conclusion: someday, people will look back at Roland, Emmerich's films, and ask one very important question. What was his deal anyway? Emmerich has, in his most popular films, destroyed the world in many colorful ways, through Aliens, Independence Day, through climate change, The Day After Tomorrow, through Japanese monsters, Godzilla, and now because an ancient Mayan calendar told him to, in terms of sheer body count. Emmerich makes Jason Voorhees look like a pacifistic Boy Scout. He says that 2012 will be his last disaster flick. "I know I can't destroy the world again," he told the New York Times. That would be kind of a joke. I don't believe him. Emmerich wrecks the world like 10-year-old boys wreck Matchbox cars with a childlike sense of innocence. So just because I callously compared him to the Friday the 13th serial killer, don't think that he is doing it all just for the sake of viciousness, just because he treats the death of 6 billion people as a ghoulish circus doesn't make him heartless, because through the mayhem, Emmerich seems to always try to explore humanity's best inclinations in that respect. 2012 is Emmerich's most positive film. I don't mean wholesome. It has too much bad language to be that. And I've already talked about the circus style, attentiveness to carnage. But while character development is kept to a bare minimum, just a skeleton on which to hang. Spectacular CGI effects, the themes here still pack a punch. We can be better than we are. We need to care for others. We are family. Most of Emmerich's characters gallop through the worst days of their lives with dry eyes, set mouths, and humorous quips at the ready. Little 7-year-old Lily, however, sees the true horror, and she cries for the unnamed billions, despite the fact that disaster movies like this are constantly used to entertain us. Hers is the more relatable response, as 2012 star John Cusack told USA Today, "If it were reality, we'd all be weeping all day." There's an old Greek myth about a little girl named Pandora and a mysterious box she finds in the story. She opens the box and lets loose all manner of plagues and horrors upon the world. But once the box's terrible residents fly off to deal out destruction, one last beautiful fairy flutters out, a thing called hope. In 2012, Emmerich opens Pandora's box and lets loose catastrophe, but in the midst of all the CGI destruction, we see the flitting wings of a thing called hope. 2012 stars John Cusack as Jackson Curtis, a writer whose passion for writing has led to a divorce when he takes his children Noah and Lily on a family vacation to Yellowstone National Park. He learns that the government has discovered the planet's core is melting, and Earth is about to change with help from the United States world governments. secretly have built multiple spaceship arcs to save the human race. But there are only thousands of tickets, not billions. K. Jackson and his family, including his ex-wife Kate, managed to get seats on one of the arcs anyway. 2012 is full of special effects and lots of disaster. The movie does an excellent job creating real chaos, but it sometimes seems too contrived, and Shade, the cast, does a good job, however, evoking real emotion, desperation, and a sense of urgency. Though it makes some strong moral points and contains some Christian redemptive moments, 2012 doesn't offer much spiritually speaking. It does destroy 2 Christian monuments, but of course no Muslim ones. Content strong moral worldview with some Christian redemptive moments, including some allusions to Noah's Ark, a positive reference to the first line of Psalm 23, and a couple other nods to Christian faith, but with some silly false predictions regarding the pagan Mayan calendar, and 2 characters are Buddhist monks, plus 2 Christian icons are destroyed, including the Vatican and a statue of Jesus. But the filmmakers reportedly were too afraid to destroy any Muslim artifacts, which seems terribly politically correct. At least 21 obscenities and 14 profanities, including several strong ones, plenty of intense action violence with scenes of entire cities destroyed and near escapes, a mention of a woman sleeping with one man while dating another, and some light kissing, upper male nudity, social drinking, no smoking, and vast depiction of selfishness and greed with regards to the selection of who gets a seat on the ark, leaving Earth, plus a crack appears between the hands of God and Adam in the Sine chapel ceiling, symbolically suggesting that God's life-giving support of man has been withdrawn somehow. More detail. 2012 is the depiction of the end of the world on December 21st, 2012. 2012 is based on the sun lining up with the center of Earth's Milky Way galaxy, which supposedly coincides with the end of the Mayan calendar. 2012 begins with the discovery of neutrinos by an academic researcher, Adrian Helmsley, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, causing physical reactions and creating microwaves to warm the Earth's core. In 2012, countries unite once they validate the fact that the world will end soon with the help of Adrian Carl and Huser, played by Oliver Platt, and the President of the United States, Thomas Wilson, played by Danny Glover. World leaders come together to put a plan in place to save heads of state, scientists, artists, plants, animals, and prized artifacts of civilization. 2012 is a story about family. In 2012, Jackson Curtis, played by John Cusack, a writer whose passion for writing has destroyed his family, stumbles on the government's secret when he takes his children, Noah and Lily, played by Liam James and Morgan Lilly, on a family vacation to Yellowstone National Park. Jackson meets Charlie Frost, played by Woody Harrelson, who tells Jackson of the government's plan, a map to a safe zone, and the spaceship they are building. Jackson, his children, and his ex-wife Kate, played by Amanda Peet, embark on a trip to make it to the safe zone. China. Jackson's family, his boss, and the Russian President Yuri Karpov, played by Zilko Barik, meet a roadblock in their own trip to the safe zone, but with the help of Jackson and his family, they make it to China after teaming up with Jackson and his family. Yuri, a ticket holder on the ship, takes his children and selfishly abandons Jackson and his family. Jackson and his family have to find another way to get onto the ships or arcs, since they are not tick holders. 2012 tells the story about the type of selection process that might be in place to save humanity, and the covert operation that governments might undertake. 2012 is also a modern-day equivalent to the story of Noah's Ark. As such, it echoes the instruction given to Noah in Genesis 6, because the Chinese build multiple arks and animals are flown in on helicopters, presumably 2x2. Tamat 12 depicts several instances of self-sacrifice. President Wilson abandons his seat on the ark to warn the American people and give families an opportunity to say goodbye to each other. Adrian convinces the heads of state to reopen the ark doors to save thousands of people left stranded outside the ark doors. In a surprising twist, Yuri sacrifices himself to ensure that his 2 sons, Alec and OLG, make it aboard. The cast of 2012 evokes real emotion, desperation, and a sense of urgency. 2012 is full of moral conflicts and dilemmas, and even minor villains, some of whom believe that nature will choose for itself Who or what will survive 2012 is full of special effects and lots of disaster. 2012 does an excellent job, creating real chaos, but it sometimes seems too contrived and cliched. It also contains too much foul language, so caution is warranted. Overall, 2012 has an excellent story about the importance of family, the importance of selflessness, and the importance of doing away with trivial disputes and making amends before it is too late. It also contains some brief Christian redemptive moments, including examples of bravery and self-sacrifice, compassion, a few references to faith, and a positive line. Quoting the first line of Psalm 23, "There is no truth, however, in people who use the Mayan calendar to predict the end of the world." The end of our world is actually described at the end of the book of Revelation, which says that Jesus Christ will return to earth to judge all the living and all the dead, and to create a new heaven and a new earth, R2:11, where God will wipe every tear from our eyes, and there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, Rev 2:14. This is something we can all believe. This film, directed by Roland Emmerich, written by Roland Emmerich, Harald Kloser, produced by Harald Kloser, Mark Gordon, Larry J. Franco, starring John Cusack, Chet Ejiofor, Amanda Peet, Oliver Platt, Tandy Natona, Danny Glover, Woody Harrelson. Photography, Dean Simler, edited by David Briner, Peter Elliott. Music by Harald Kloser, Thomas, Wander Production Company, Columbia Pictures, Centropolis. Entertainment distributed by Sony Pictures, release date November 13, 2009, running time 158 minutes, country United States, language English, budget $1,200 million, box office $7,902 million. So guys, this is the review of 2012 movie and some information about how do you like our today's video. Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it.